Hi, my name is Aleksandra. Unit 6 talks about plants. Chapter 36 focuses primarily on the behavior of flowering plants. Section 3 of Chapter 36 talks about plant responses to environmental stimuli. Plants detect light and measure day length. Photoperiodism is the plant's ability to measure and respond to light amounts and day length. This is based on the presence of light receptors, called photoreceptors. Behaviors associated include sun tracking, phototropism, flowering, and seed germination. There are two types of light receptors. The first type is a blue light receptor, and these are molecules that absorb and respond to blue light. Cryptochromes are an example of blue light receptors, and they help young seedlings determine if the light environment allows for photosynthesis. Another example includes phototropins. Phototropins are involved in phototropisms. There are two components to phototropins. There's a protein with a kinase domain and a flavin pigment that absorbs blue light. When exposed to blue light, phototropins are phosphorylated, and the light signal is converted to a chemical signal. The second type of light receptor includes a phytochrome. Phytochromes are red and far red light receptors. Phytochrome. Phytochromes are red and far red light receptors. Activation of a phytochrome occurs in three stages. The first stage, PR, is the inactive conformation of phytochrome, and it occurs in the cytosol and is a receptor of red light. In step 2, red light activates the phytochrome, converting it to PFR, a receptor for far red light. In step 3, the active PFR is moved to the nucleus where it interacts with specific proteins, thereby regulating genes and causing responses such as seed germination. Photoperiodism. Photoperiodism is a response to relative lengths of darkness that influence the timing of dormancy and flowering. There are several flowering plant classifications. These include long day plants, short day plants, and day-neutral plants. Long day plants flower in spring or early summer when night periods are short and day periods are long. Examples of long day plants include lettuce, spinach, radish, beet, clover, gladiolus, and iris. Short day plants flower only when light lengths are longer than a defined period. Flowering occurs during late summer, fall, or winter. Examples of short day plants include asters, strawberries, dahlias, poinsettias, potatoes, soybeans, and goldenrods. Day-neutral plants flower regardless of night as long as day length meets the minimum requirement for plant growth. Examples of day-neutral plants include roses, tomatoes, cucumbers, sunflowers, carnations, snapdragons, and cotton. Shading responses. Phytochromes mediate plant response to shading. Leaves extend from shady portions, tree canopies, into the light, and growth allows plants to avoid being shaded by neighboring plants. Leaves detect shade as increased proportions of far red to red light. The growth response includes elongation of branch internodes. Plants respond to gravity and touch. Gravitropism is a growth response to the force of gravity. Shoots are an example of negative gravitropic plants because they grow in the opposite direction of the gravitational force. Roots are an example of positive gravitropic plants because they grow in the same direction as gravitational force. Statoliths are starch-heavy plasmids that detect gravity. They are located in gravity-sensing cells called statocytes. Thigmotropism. Thigmotropism is a gravity response related to touch response. Roots will temporarily supersede gravity response and grow around a barrier. Leaf folding by touch-sensitive plants results from an action potential opening ion channels in parenchyma cells on the lower surface of pulvini. The cells will lose potassium and chloride ions, causing water to flow out and flatten the cells. The leaflets will then bend, causing the entire leaf to fold. This can be seen in Figure 36:15, in the leaf folding of a sensitive plant and how pulvini change the positions of leaflets. Plants respond to physical stress. There are two types of physical stress listed: flooding and drought. When flooding occurs, too much water makes roots unable to obtain sufficient oxygen to fuel respiratory processes. This causes the roots to be unable to produce ATP, which is needed to absorb minerals from soil. Plants also produce parenchyma, which is a tissue containing a large like airway that allows oxygen to flow from shoots to the submerged roots. When drought occurs, high salinity, heat, and cold reduce the amount of liquid water present in cells. Plants will regulate aquaporins that form water channels and plasma membranes, allowing for the uptake of water. Plants respond to biological stress caused by herbivores and pathogen attacks. Pathogens include disease-causing viruses, bacteria, and fungi. Plants will form their own structural barriers, and these include cuticles, epidermal trichomes, and an outer bark. The outer bark reduces infection and protects against an herbivore attack. Plants' defense against viruses include microRNAs and nucleic acid degrading enzymes. Plant responses to herbivores. Plants will have several chemical defenses, such as alkaloids, terpenes, terpenoids, phenolics, and phytoalexins. Mouth secretions and damage caused by insects will trigger plant defenses. The plant will produce jasmonic acid, which is a protective hormone. Jasmonic acid acts like an alarm system. It binds to protein inhibitors of transcription factors, leading to inhibitor destruction and starting gene expression. Here's an example of plant response to herbivore attacks, and there are 3 steps. Plant responses to pathogen attacks. Bacterial and fungal pathogens produce elicitors that promote virulence. Virulence is infection of cells and tissues. Bacteria will inject elicitors into plants, while fungi will deliver elicitors to penetrate cell walls and absorb nutrients. Plants have evolved 20 types of resistance genes. These genes code protein receptors for elicitors. Hypersensitive response to pathogen attack. Plants recognize elicitors released by pathogens and respond to limit disease symptoms. There are several components. One of them includes increased production of hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide can kill infectious agents and strengthen the cell wall by cross-binding polymers. Hydrogen peroxide also stimulates synthesis of hydrolytic enzymes, defensive secondary metabolites, hormone salicylic acid, and tough ligands in cell walls of nearby tissues. Nitric oxide will also induce cell death by depriving pathogens of food and preventing the spread of pathogens by forming necrotic patches. Systemic acquired resistance, or SAR. SAR is a type of plant immune system. It uses the same signaling associated with herbivore attacks, such as producing jasmonic acid, producing hormone salicylic acid, which produces induction of resistance in non-infected tissues. It also uses defensive enzymes that break down pathogen cell walls and generate tannins, which are toxic to microorganisms. Here's a figure that explains the pathogen-plant interactions and the hypersensitive response to pathogen attacks.